When you do that political compass test, there is a very interesting question. What do you think unites people more, race or class? And I have to say, I think class beats race all the time. Maybe this is because I'm a little bit subjective, having grown in Europe, in a country that's predominantly white. But I can't deny the fact that there are indeed social frictions based on ethnicity, and it's impossible to deny them because you see them on television between Romanians and Hungarians. I grew up in a neighborhood with predominantly people that were of gypsy ethnicity. I know these frictions exist. I am fully aware of them. There's a lot of work to do in order to try to unite people. And I'm fully aware that there are ideologies that are meant to break people apart based on how they were born. Um, but with that said, I every single time I notice that class manages to trump this every single time when it was pushed to the challenge. Now, maybe I need to explain what class is because when you come from an European background where for thousands of years class has been ingrained in your culture, it's a little bit difficult to even express myself what class is. But you have to think about the fact that in the past, people that were born differently were treated differently. So you had the nobility, the highborn, the people of noble blood, and then you had the peasantry, the lowborn. And there were even separate laws that governed these people. So, for example, if a peasant would rape a noble's daughter, he would be executed. But if a noble would rape a peasant's daughter, he would have to pay a fine. And this was like the entire legal system was differentiated based on class. For the lack of a better term, you can make the argument that peasants were treated as slaves. Not as bad as slavery in America, but you couldn't leave your land. You couldn't marry a person without the consent of the noble in certain places. And you had to pay enormous tithes to the nobility. Some peasants would grow up hungry and starving because they weren't able to feed themselves, having to pay the noble. So the idea of class is heavily ingrained. Now, what's interesting is that class doesn't necessarily mean wealth. It does, in effect, like mean how much money you have, but it's even then, it's also the attitude that a person has, the way he conducts himself, the way he speaks, the way he displays himself, and this is what Americans don't understand. Like, the best example would be if a person that shows a lot of wealth, like if I were to come on this channel and surround myself in bling with golden chains and golden watches and jewelry and all of this bling, people would say that I'm of lower class. They would look at me. I mean, they wouldn't say that specifically, but they would notice, okay, this is a person that didn't grow up wealthy. Like, this is a person that managed to get himself rich quick, and he is not a perfect moral example for society. At least this is how people in Europe would view me. People who are grown in a wealthy family, people who are affluent, they're treated differently because they grow up with the money, and they know how it is like to have money. So they don't feel the need to display the wealth. They don't feel the need to buy a new iPhone. They don't feel the need to show off the fact that they're wealthy. Usually the people that buy iPhones are either people who were raised in a wealthy family but mommy and daddy never gave them cash, or people who just managed to get rich quick. It's just one example. But anyway, right, so where am I going with this? Well, I lived both in poverty and I lived both when I had money. Right now, I'm very happy with how I am. I can't call myself wealthy, but I definitely cannot call myself poor. Like, I actually did live in, as I mentioned, a very impoverished neighborhood, very impoverished area, and I know how it is. It changes your entire mindset. It changes your entire lifestyle. Like, when you have money, like right now, I do not worry what happens if my cat gets sick because I have the money to take the cat to a vet. These are just some basic things that you don't even think about. I don't worry about what I'm going to eat tomorrow. I don't worry about what happens if I get sick. I don't have to worry about these things because I know I can take care of it. I don't worry if the television breaks down. When you don't have money, all these things, all of them, become things that you're concerned with. You're very concerned. It's like, okay, this is how much money I got, and I need to do the shopping. And you actually go to the shopping center with a list in order to make sure that you do the math and you don't run out of cash. And it's very embarrassing. Like you go to the cashier and you're afraid, like, what if she charges you extra? Where is the exit so I can run, as far away as possible? You appreciate life differently. Like when you go to an expensive place with your girlfriend once a month, you appreciate that place more than when you have money and you go there every week. You don't, like, you can be in a luxurious place and you're not even enjoying it. You don't even realize. Okay, so these are like things that create a different vision of the world. Okay, people who are impoverished see the world differently. And I am telling you this from a personal experience, because there was times when I earned $100 a month, and then when I started earning $1,000 a month, I would see the world completely differently. But I would always try to remember where my roots are. I always try to remember where I came from, and I try my best in order to help other people and try to uplift them whenever I can. And it's a completely different worldview, but I don't think other people share this worldview like I do. And this is why I made this video, because there was this tweet that I genuinely think it belongs in a museum. I definitely think that this is something that should be framed for future generations to see, because it's a mindset that is very interesting. Like in America, you got these protests right now, which have to do with race, right? Like Black Lives Matter, they're fighting racism and whatnot. And you have this gentleman that is also black. So he wants to show solidarity, I guess, for the people that are struggling. And by doing this, he shows the picture of an affordable income housing burning to the ground. Now, when I look at something like this, as a person that didn't have money, I view this as a tragedy. There is no way you can frame this as a net positive. Burning down income housing is quite a big problem for a lot of people. Like, I remember when I was a kid and I wanted to move out of my house, and I wanted so much to become independent, but you look around and you don't find any house that you can afford. For some family, it's not an option. Like, I'm pretty sure for this guy who works at the NBA, he can just afford the house whenever he wants to. For a lot of people, this is like a life decision. It's a very important thing to move. They do it once or twice in their lifetime, and some even don't do it at all. So, it's very detached from the reality in the ground for the people that live in the neighborhoods. But when the reality comes and it knocks at his door, all of a sudden he changes his tune. All of a sudden, when the reality kicks in, and he's the one that affected, he notices that the people in the neighborhood do not show the same support towards him just because he's got the correct skin color. Like, the people are more united on class. They look at him, they don't see a fellow person in suffering. No, they see a rich person. They see a wealthy person. They see someone that is above them. And they're not going to just look the other way. And this is like what I see with the press as well. And a lot of people like CNN, for example, being shocked that the protesters are vandalizing their headquarters. It's like, yeah, the protesters aren't cerebral, ideological driven. The protesters are people that are there and they see you that you're wealthy and you have stuff. And you're not one of them. Like, they would much more empathize with a white person from the hood that they know, and it's like, oh, that's my neighbor. Like, I grew up with him. No, he's cool. He's cool, bro. He's cool. They emphasize more with that guy than with someone like CNN that lives in a HQ that is defended by the cops. And not only that, it's probably more antagonizing for these people because, you go down from business to business to business, the cops aren't there, and all of a sudden you get to the rich neighborhood and the cops are there. Like, it's almost an insult to, their way of life. It's like, what? So we're too poor to deserve cops? Like, people make these connections. Don't think that people are that stupid and they don't realize what is going on. And when you promote an ideology that's literally saying "eat the rich," usually the people promoting this ideology, they don't consider themselves to be rich. They consider themselves to be poor. They consider the rich to be like, if they're the millionaires, like Bernie Sanders, they consider the billionaires to be the one that's rich. But they are completely oblivious to the fact that a big chunk of the population is far more poorer than they are, and they are the ones that are actually the rich. And the population, like, I know, like, I spoke with communists, like legitimate communists that identify as such. And they try to rationalize how, no, you see, the bourgeoisie isn't like the NBA player, or the bourgeoisie isn't Emma Watson. No, like, those are the petite bourgeoisie. Like, look, Karl Marx in his manifesto made the difference. When the masses mobilize, okay, when the masses go to quote-unquote eat the rich, to fight the oppression, they're not going to say, whoa, fellow revolutionaries. Look, according to Karl Marx, this person, yes, he may seem wealthy. However, due to the Communist Manifesto, we notice that the way he acquisited his wealth, if you actually think like that, you're a moron. Like, the masses do not act like that. They're going to see a rich gated community and they're going to want to go in, okay? That is the only thing that is going to happen when the masses mobilize. Which is why it's a good thing if the masses don't mobilize, if we don't have the revolution. That's the actual good thing. Because again, like, chances are there are more people that are poorer than you than the people that are richer than you. Like, a best example is PewDiePie. Okay, now PewDiePie is a self-made man. PewDiePie is someone that managed to make wealth in a very honest way. He made a YouTube channel, he became popular, he made money, he donated money to charity, he donated money to other causes, like fighting AIDS in Africa, getting water for people in African villages, you know, like really noble causes. He did something. Other people probably wouldn't. There are so many people that make money on YouTube or on Twitch that would never donate to a cause. Now, you may say, well, he made money in a very easy way. It's not an example. But it doesn't matter. Like, he didn't steal them. He didn't steal them. He didn't oppress people by making the money, okay? And yet, socialists and the Hammer and Sickle Brigade despise him. Why do they despise him? Because he's rich. That's the only thing that, like, you know? So you have in this case the Palmer guy, which was happy when he saw income housing burning, saying, they just attacked our sister community down the street. It's a gated community, and they tried to climb the gates. They had to beat them back, then destroy Starbucks, and are now in front of my building. And now he dehumanizes the same masses that he was cheering. You know, like, all of a sudden there is no more connection. Like, this racial identity that, I guess, you know, it's gone. It's just the fact, the way they're acting. Like, the idea is that if Chris Martin would ever become impoverished and he would ever have to live in the hood, he wouldn't act like that. Like, he wouldn't go to gated communities in order to try to climb them and destroy the Starbucks. That's what he's saying. And this is why I always think, like, class will trump race. Like, this person has more in common with other people that have the same money as him and spins around in the same circles that he does than he has with the people suffering in the neighborhoods. He doesn't understand them. He can't understand them. And it goes the other way too, by the way. Like, if you're a poor person, you probably want to understand someone that spends his entire day on the Twitter, virtue signaling left and right and center, because that's how he needs to be in order to maintain his position. He needs to make sure that he doesn't piss off anyone, and he constantly virtue signals, I'm part of you guys, so that when he needs a job or he needs a promotion, people can look at his social media and go like, oh yeah, he's one of us. No, he's a decent person. Poor people don't understand that. They don't have the time to spend on Twitter. They need to go to work. They need to do actual stuff. You know, they're worried that their kid gets sick and they don't have money to pay for the bills. It's a completely different lifestyle when you live in such a place. And yeah, I mean, again, this is obvious. And I want to make it absolutely clear, because I know, like, some people from America will not understand what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say that there isn't, like, a racial identity, because obviously there is, because Black Lives Matter, right? Like, it's a movement built around race. Like, there are ideologies that talk race. But those ideologies disappear the moment you have a conflict and they're replaced with class. Like, you are more likely to see, as I mentioned before, people that are white working with the people in the neighborhood that know each other and they understand, you know, each other because they have the same class. But even if you're like the same race and you're rich and they're poor, yeah, not gonna work. Especially with the ideologies that are like, eat the rich. Again, I hope I managed to explain myself and articulate myself properly, because, you know, these conversations are very difficult to have. White people have difficult conversations about race and whatnot. But yeah, like, again, just to point it out, yeah, it is important, but not as important as class. Like, class will always trump it. at the end of the day. And it's just like shared life experiences that unite people. That's what I think. And I have seen on Twitter several examples. Another one with a journalist that had her publication vandalized, and she just doesn't understand why. Because you look rich. Because people that are doing the destruction do not have businesses as nice as yours. It's also jealousy, yeah, in a way. And not just jealousy, it's also the fact, like the mentality that I seen the Amazing Atheist have. It's like, well, the rich are insured. Like, they have insurance. It doesn't matter, right? So they will think, well, if I hurt the person that's poor, they actually feel bad because they feel like someone hurting them. And it's like, they can place themselves into the shoes of a poor person. But when it's a person that's rich, they go like, well, they have insurance, you know, they probably have some money saved somewhere, like they're going to make it. That's the mentality that the masses have. And, you know, I come from Mr. Europe to try to explain it to you and see what you guys have to say in the comment section. I'll see you there.